The legend of Baba Yaga. Her name is not a name at all. It is a warning that has replaced something far older, something too dangerous to speak aloud. For centuries, the forests of Eastern Europe have whispered of Baba Yaga. But before we can seek her out, before we dare approach the hut that walks on chicken legs, we must understand what we are calling into the darkness. Because names have power, and hers has a secret buried within it. In both Russian and English, the word for witch means the same thing, one who knows. The Russian vedma comes from ved, to know. The English witch descends from wit, knowledge, sharpness of mind, the keeping of one's wits in the face of terror. This is no coincidence. Across languages and centuries, the witch is the woman who possesses forbidden knowledge, who remembers what others have forgotten or are too frightened to seek. But Baba Yaga? Her name is stranger still. Baba seems simple enough, a peasant woman, one old enough to have children. Yet our witch is far, far older than that. The word itself carries hidden weight. When Russians build a snowman, they call it a snow baba. And within the word lives an ancient belief. A bashka, butterfly, connects to the conviction that when someone died, their soul left the body as a bird or butterfly, fluttering toward the other world. A butterfly passing by was the soul of a little grandmother traveling between realms. Already, death and transformation are woven into her very title, but it is the second half of her name that truly unsettles. Yaga, scholars have debated its meaning for generations, and the truth is no one knows. Some link it to words meaning to ride, echoing her wild flight through the night sky. Others connect it to South Slavic terms, jeza as shiver, or yezivo as chilling, horrifying. The Polish know her as Jidza. The Czechs speak of the Jezinka the forest Baba. But the most compelling theory is this: Yaga is itself a replacement, a euphemism for a name so sacred or so terrible that it could not be spoken. Just as the ancient Slavs lost the original word for bear and substituted it for medved, the honey knower, to avoid invoking the creature's true name. Perhaps Baba Yaga's real name was whispered in rituals, guarded by taboo, and then lost entirely to time, leaving only this shadow behind. When we say Baba Yaga, we are not speaking a name. We are speaking a description. The old woman who is Yaga, the knowing one, the terrifying one, she whose true name we have forgotten. In Russian, the words are not even capitalized because she is not a person. She is a force, an archetype, appearing again and again across the deep woods of Eastern Europe. And there is not just one. The old tales speak of sisters, of cousins, multiple Baba Yagas who dwell in their own territories, who know of one another, who send desperate travelers from one threshold to the next in an ever-deepening journey toward the heart of the other world. They do not live together, but they are connected guardians of different gates, keepers of different mysteries. This is who we are about to seek. Not a woman, but a presence. Not a character in a story, but an ancient power whose very identity has been erased and replaced by a title that means only this: she who knows, and she who must be feared. Now that we know what to call her, or rather, what we cannot call her, we can begin. We can leave the familiar world behind. We can step off the path. We can enter the forest and seek the impossible house that stands on chicken legs, spinning in the clearing where the skulls burn with an eternal fire. We can knock on her door. If we are brave enough, if we are respectful enough, if we are ready to face what answers. In the old tales of the Slavic world, the forest is not just a collection of trees. It is a character, a living, breathing entity that exists on the border between our world and another. It is a place of deep shadow and even deeper memory, where the normal rules of reality begin to fray, and where those who are lost or desperate or brave enough to seek it can find things that should not exist. You journey for days, leaving the familiar behind. The path disappears. The sounds of human life fade into an oppressive silence, broken only by the snap of a twig underfoot or the whisper of the wind, which sometimes sounds like a name. It is here in the heart of the deep woods that you might find her domain. But you do not find her. First you find her house. It is a thing of profound impossibility, a small crude log cabin perched precariously on a pair of giant scaly chicken legs. It does not sit still. The house can walk, it can run, and sometimes it spins in a frantic, dizzying circle. It has a will of its own, and it is surrounded by a fence made of human bones. Its posts topped with skulls whose eye sockets glow with an eerie internal fire in the darkness. To approach the house is a ritual in itself. One cannot simply walk up to the door. You must know the secret words, the proper incantation, to make it stop its spinning and turn its door towards you. Hut, oh hut, turn your back to the forest and your front to me. Only then does the house groan to a halt, its great legs bending, lowering itself to the ground to grant you entry. And who is the mistress of this impossible home? She is a monster who sharpens her teeth on a stone and eats lost children. And she is a wise woman who offers the magical gifts that can save a kingdom. She is a witch who commands the elements. And she is the guardian of the waters of life and death. She flies through the sky in a giant mortar, using the pestle as a rudder and sweeping away her tracks with a broom made of silver birch. For centuries, one name has haunted the forests of Eastern Europe, Baba Yaga. But is she a villain, a helper, or a force of nature as neutral and as dangerous as the forest itself? Who or what is she? To find the answer, we must do as the heroes of the old stories did. We must be brave, we must be respectful, and we must knock on her door. To truly understand the enigma of Baba Yaga, we must not look at her alone. We must look at those who are brave or desperate enough to seek her out. And of all the heroes and heroines in the old stories, none is more famous than a young girl known as Vasilisa the Beautiful. Her story begins, as so many do, with a dying mother's last gift. Before she passed away, Vasilisa's mother gave her a small magical doll with a final instruction. "Feed this doll, my child," she said, "and consult it whenever you are in trouble. It will help you." This doll was more than a toy. It was Vasilisa's intuition, the inherited wisdom of her maternal line, given physical form. After her mother's death, Vasilisa's father remarried a cruel and jealous woman with 2 daughters of her own. The stepmother and stepsisters were envious of Vasilisa's beauty and gentle spirit, and they tormented her relentlessly. They forced her to do all the work of the household, hoping to wear her down with endless labor and extinguish the light within her. But every night, Vasilisa would share a small crumb of her food with her doll and tell it her troubles, and the doll would come to life, comforting her and magically performing all of her impossible chores while she slept. It would weed the garden, carry the water, and light the fires. And so, despite her family's cruelty, Vasilisa endured, and her beauty only grew. Determined to be rid of her once and for all, the stepmother devised a wicked plan. She moved the family to a small, isolated cottage on the very edge of a deep, dark forest that everyone knew was the domain of Baba Yaga. One autumn evening, the stepmother put out every candle and lamp in the house, plunging them into darkness. "We have no fire," she declared. "One of you must go to our neighbor's house to ask for a light." Of course, their only neighbor was the witch. The stepsisters refused in mock terror, and so the duty fell to Vasilisa. It was a death sentence disguised as a household chore. And so, with only her doll in her pocket for comfort, the young Vasilisa was sent out alone into the haunted woods on an impossible errand. Vasilisa walked all through the night. The forest grew deeper, darker, and more silent. The branches of the ancient trees seemed to reach for her, and strange sounds echoed in the darkness. She was terrified, but she trusted the doll, which she kept in her pocket, and it guided her feet, keeping her on the path. She walked through the next day, and as another night began to fall, she knew she must be close. The woods here felt different, older, and possessed by a powerful and unsettling presence. The very air seemed to hum with a strange energy. And it was then that she witnessed the first of the great mysteries. Suddenly, a rider galloped past her. The man himself was dressed all in white. His face was bright and shining, and he rode upon a pure white horse, and as he passed, the deep darkness of the night receded, and the pale gray light of dawn began to filter through the trees. Vasilisa was struck with awe, but she continued on her way. Later, as the sun was high in the sky, a second rider galloped past. This one was dressed all in red. His face was flushed and brilliant, and he rode upon a blood-red horse. And as he passed, the sun began to blaze with its full midday glory. Vasilisa now understood that these were no mortal horsemen. She was entering a realm where the fundamental forces of the world took on a physical form. Finally, as evening fell, she reached a clearing, and there she saw Baba Yaga's impossible hut, surrounded by its fence of bones. Just as she arrived, a third and final rider galloped past. He was dressed all in black, his face was dark as a shadow, and he rode upon a jet-black horse. He rode straight through Baba Yaga's gates and vanished. And as he did, night fell upon the world instantly, a deep and total darkness. Vasilisa stood in terror, the only light now coming from the glowing eye sockets of the skulls on the fence. Her doll trembled in her pocket. She had just witnessed the passing of Baba Yaga's faithful servants, her bright day, her red sun, and her dark midnight. The being she had come to see did not just rule a small hut in the woods. She commanded time itself. Trembling, Vasilisa entered the hut and found herself in a strange and wondrous place. The hut was far larger on the inside than it had appeared from without, but it was also grim and forbidding. The air was thick with the smell of strange herbs and something else, something vaguely human. She saw a great dark stove, a table that set itself, and stranger still, 3 pairs of disembodied hands that scurried about, acting as invisible servants. Then the very air began to howl, and the trees outside groaned. A great noise filled the forest as Baba Yaga came flying home. She landed in her courtyard, sniffed the air, and shrieked, "I smell a human. Who is there?" Vasilisa, remembering her doll's advice, stepped forward, bowed low, and answered respectfully, but without a tremor in her voice. "It is only I, grandmother. My stepsisters sent me to you to ask for fire." Baba Yaga glared down at the girl with her terrible eyes. "I know your stepmother," she snarled. "Very well. You shall have your fire if you can earn it." You will stay here and work for me. If you do everything I ask, you will get what you came for. If not, she grinned, revealing her sharpened iron teeth, then I shall eat you. The next morning, Baba Yaga gave Vasilisa her first set of impossible tasks. She was to sweep the yard, clean the entire hut, cook the dinner, and most impossibly, she was to take a bushel of wheat and separate it, grain by single grain, from a pile of dirt and poppy seeds. And she was to have it all done by the time Baba Yaga returned. Left alone, Vasilisa looked upon the mountain of grain, and her heart filled with despair. The task was truly impossible. She began to weep, but then she remembered her mother's gift. She took out the small wooden doll, set a crumb of bread before it, and told it of her terrible predicament. The doll's eyes seemed to glow. "Do not weep, little mistress," a tiny voice whispered. "Eat your supper, say your prayers, and go to sleep, for the morning is always wiser than the evening." And so, trusting her intuition, Vasilisa did as she was told. While Vasilisa slept a deep and peaceful sleep, the little doll went to work. It summoned ants and birds and unseen helpers. And all through the night, it sorted the great pile, separating the wheat from the poppy seeds and from the dirt into 3 neat mounds. When Baba Yaga returned the next day, she was astonished and enraged to find every task completed perfectly. Bound by the ancient rules of magic, she could not punish the girl. But she was not yet defeated. She set even more tasks for the next day, each one more impossible than the last. And each night, the doll completed them. Vasilisa never saw how the work was done. She simply trusted her inner voice, rested, and awoke to find that her trials had been overcome. Finally, Baba Yaga knew she had been bested. A power greater than her own was protecting the girl. "You have done your work," she grumbled. "Take your fire." But first, she allowed Vasilisa to ask some questions. Remembering her doll's advice, Vasilisa wisely asked only about the things she had seen outside the hut. "I saw a white horseman," she said. "Who was he?" "That was my bright day," the witch replied. "And the red horseman?" "That was my red sun." "And the black horseman?" "That was my dark midnight. They are my faithful servants." Baba Yaga then turned her terrible gaze upon the girl. "And why do you not ask about the things you saw inside my hut? The disembodied hands?" Vasilisa bowed her head and replied, "Because you yourself have said, grandmother, that it is not good for those who know too much." This answer, showing that Vasilisa respected the boundaries of secret knowledge, pleased the old witch greatly. She had passed the final test, the test of wisdom. With the tests complete, Baba Yaga's demeanor changed. She was bound by the ancient laws of magic and hospitality. The girl had earned her prize. "You have asked enough," the witch grumbled. "Take the fire you came for and go." Baba Yaga walked to her terrible fence, plucked one of the skulls with its furiously burning eyes from a post, mounted it on a stick, and handed it to Vasilisa. "Here is your light," she said. "Take it home. This is what your stepmother sent you for." Vasilisa took the gruesome lantern, bowed one last time, and turned to leave. As she walked away, she heard Baba Yaga's voice call out behind her, "You have been well served, child. Be well." It was not a warm blessing, but a simple statement of fact from one power recognizing another. Vasilisa walked back through the forest, but this time there was no fear in her heart. The path that had seemed so terrifying in the darkness was now brilliantly illuminated by the eerie, otherworldly light of the skull. The ancient gnarled trees seemed to shrink away from its gaze. The darkness itself recoiled. She wanted to throw the skull away to be rid of the terrible object, but a quiet voice from the doll in her pocket whispered, "Do not throw it away, little mistress. You have earned it. Carry it home." Vasilisa understood. She was no longer just a frightened girl sent on an errand. She was now a wielder of magic, a carrier of a powerful and dangerous justice taken from the land of the dead itself. When she finally arrived back at the cottage, her stepmother and stepsisters rushed to meet her. They told her they had been without fire the entire time she was gone, unable to strike a spark. They were relieved to see the light she carried, hoping their cruel plan had succeeded in some other way. But as Vasilisa stepped into the cottage, the skull's burning eyes fixed upon the three wicked women. They stared, transfixed into its empty sockets. The light it gave off seemed to intensify to hunt them. They tried to run, to hide in the shadows of the room, but there was nowhere to hide. The light followed them, its gaze filled with an unearthly intelligence and an ancient burning judgment. The skull's gaze burned into them, tracking their every move. It scorched them with a magical fire. And by morning, all that was left of the cruel stepmother and her two wicked daughters was a small pile of fine black ash. This was not an act of murder committed by Vasilisa. It was an act of justice delivered by the uncanny power she had brought back from the very edge of the other world. Having survived her ordeal and seen justice done, Vasilisa buried the skull in the garden so it could harm no other. She left the cursed cottage behind forever and went on to live a long and prosperous life. Her trial by fire was over. She had faced the great and terrible mother of the woods and had emerged not as a victim, but as a wise and powerful woman in her own right. And so ends the most famous telling of the story of Vasilisa the Beautiful, as it was collected in the 19th century by Russian folklorists. It is a powerful tale of quiet endurance, feminine intuition, and the righteous fiery justice of the other world. These old stories are not like modern novels, fixed and unchanging. They are like a great river flowing through generations, with streams branching off from the main stories. The story of Vasilisa is no different. In others across the land, the heroine is a starkly different figure. She is sometimes called Vasilisa the Brave, a strong, independent, and quite unmaidenly character who is an expert shot with a rifle. In other versions, her path to royalty is won not by the terrifying justice of the skull, but through other circumstances or skills she develops. What remains constant across all these versions, however, is the core of the initiation, a young woman's perilous journey into the domain of the great and terrible witch, a journey from which she always emerges with a newfound power and a deeper wisdom. It is this central, unchangeable trial that reveals the true ancient purpose of the tale. The most bizarre and memorable image from the legend could be the impossible house that stands on two giant chicken legs. We have seen it as a source of terror for the lost traveler. But to truly understand Baba Yaga, we must deconstruct the very place she calls home. It is an image of profound strangeness. It blends the domestic with the monstrous, the mundane with the magical. In the stories, the hut is not just a building. It is a living, sentient being. It can run through the forest at great speed, or it can stand in one place, spinning around and around in a dizzying circle. It is the first sign that a hero has left the ordinary world behind and entered a place where the laws of nature no longer apply. And yet this impossible image may have its roots in a very real and practical human invention. For centuries, the nomadic peoples of Siberia and northern Europe built their food storehouses in a peculiar way to protect their precious supplies from animals on the ground and moisture from the melting snow. They would build the small windowless log cabins on top of 2 or 3 tall rot-resistant tree stumps. From a distance, To a stranger unfamiliar with this building technique, these small cabins would have appeared to be standing on legs. The base of the tree stumps, with their gnarled roots spreading out for stability, would have looked very much like the feet of a giant bird. It is highly likely that the fantastical image of Baba Yaga's hut is a folkloric memory, a mythologized description of these very real, strange-looking nomadic structures. In the fairy tales, however, it is a character and a magical guardian. It never faces the approaching hero. Its door is always turned towards the deep forest. To gain entry, the hero must know the secret magical formula, the incantation that proves they are worthy. "Hut, O hut," they must say, "turn your back to the forest and your front to me." Only upon hearing these correct words will the house obey. With a great creaking and groaning of wood, it will turn on its great legs to face the visitor, lowering itself to the ground. The hut itself is the first test, a sentient gatekeeper that decides who is and who is not allowed to confront its fearsome mistress. This reveals the hut's deeper symbolic meaning. It is a liminal space, a place that is neither here nor there. It exists on the very border between the world of the living and the land of the dead, the other world known in Slavic folklore as the thrice 10th kingdom. Its ability to turn its back on the forest and its front to the hero is the literal turning of a key and a lock between two dimensions. To enter Baba Yaga's hut is to willingly leave our world behind. It is to cross a threshold into a realm of pure magic and spirit, a place where time moves differently and the souls of the dead are close at hand. The hut is not just where Baba Yaga lives. It is the very portal to the supernatural world over which she holds dominion. Baba Yaga's strangeness extends beyond her impossible home to the very tools she uses. We have seen her arrive in a great mortar, steering with a pestle and sweeping her tracks with a broom. These may seem like bizarre, almost comical objects for a being of her power, but they are not random. They are deeply symbolic, and they reveal another layer of her ancient identity. The mortar and pestle were fundamental tools of the traditional woman's world. They were used to grind grain into flour, to transform raw ingredients into life-sustaining food. It is an act of creation, of nourishment, of domestic power. Baba Yaga takes these tools of life and subverts them. Her mortar does not create food. It is a vehicle of pursuit. In some stories, it is what she uses to grind up the bones of her victims. She represents domestic power untamed, broken free from the confines of the home, and unleashed upon the world with terrifying destructive force. The broom, too, has a dual meaning. It is another simple domestic tool used for cleansing and keeping order. But in Baba Yaga's hands, it becomes a tool of magical concealment. By sweeping away her tracks from the very air, she makes herself impossible to follow, untraceable. This act reinforces her status as a being who does not truly belong to our world. She moves through it, but she leaves no mark. She is a secret, a keeper of boundaries, and her passage is meant to be forgotten by all but those she chooses to interact with. Her broom does not just sweep away dust, it sweeps away her very presence from the fabric of reality. We have seen the gruesome fence that encircles Baba Yaga's domain, a horrifying barrier built from the remains of those who failed her tests. But this fence is not just a macabre decoration. It is a profound symbol, and by deconstructing it, we can understand the very nature of the world she rules. The posts are human bones. The gate is made of leg bones, and the lock is a jawbone with sharp teeth. This is a clear and brutal statement of her power. It is a warning, a trophy case, and a promise. It tells any approaching hero that they are entering the domain of a being for whom death is not a tragedy, but a building material. A being who holds absolute power over the lives and bodies of those who enter her world. At night, the only light in the clearing comes from the skulls themselves. Their empty eye sockets burn with an eternal magical fire, illuminating the clearing with an eerie dancing glow. This is the fire that Vasilisa was sent to retrieve, a light that comes directly from the face of death. In many of the tales, the fence has one post that is conspicuously empty. Baba Yaga will often tell the hero that if they fail in their impossible tasks, she will eat them and use their skull to complete her fence. This transforms the gruesome barrier from a simple warning into a direct personal threat, a ticking clock that measures the hero's proximity to becoming just another one of the witch's ghastly lanterns. But the fence is not truly meant to keep people out. It is a symbolic boundary. It is the literal and unmistakable border marker for the land of the dead. To pass through the gate made of human bones is to leave the world of the living behind and enter the underworld, a separate reality where Baba Yaga is the absolute authority. She is not just a witch living in the woods. She is a primal goddess, the great and terrible guardian of the threshold between our world and the next. To understand the true origin of a figure as strange and ancient as Baba Yaga, we must look beyond the fairy tales. We must journey back further in time to the world before the arrival of the Christians, to the deep primordial faith of the Slavic peoples. This was a world governed by a pantheon of powerful and often fearsome nature gods. At the head of this pantheon was the great Perun, the god of thunder, lightning, and war, a stern and fiery sky father whose sacred tree was the mighty oak and whose weapon was the axe. His great rival was Vels, the horned god of the low places, of the forests, the water, and the underworld. Vels was a god of magic, of secrets, of cattle, and of wealth. And the cosmic battle between the high god of the sky and the horned god of the earth formed the central drama of their mythology. The ancient Slavs did not build great stone temples like the Sumerians or Greeks. Their most sacred spaces were the ones already provided by nature. They worshiped in ancient untouched groves of trees, on the peaks of high mountains, and at the bends of sacred rivers. Here they would erect great wooden idols intricately carved with the faces of their gods. And before them, their priests, known as the volvi, would make offerings of bread, grain, and mead. Their faith was not contained within four walls. It was woven directly into the fabric of the land they inhabited, a deep and inseparable bond between the people and the spirits of the natural world. And it was not just the great gods who held power. For the ancient Slavs, the entire world was saturated with magic and consciousness. Every forest had its own guardian spirit, the Leshy. Every body of water had its beautiful and dangerous Rusalka. And every home had its mischievous household spirit, the Domovoi. This was a world where the boundary between the natural and the supernatural was thin, porous, and constantly shifting, a world where spirits were not just a matter of belief, but of daily lived experience. It is from within this ancient animistic worldview, a world of powerful nature gods and ever-present spirits, that we must search for the true primordial face of Baba Yaga. To find the true origins of Baba Yaga, we must understand that she is not just a character. She is the great and fearsome crone, the third face of the ancient triple goddess, the maiden, the mother, and finally the crone. The crone is the embodiment of winter, of endings, of death, and of the harsh, terrifying wisdom that comes only with immense age. Many historians believe that Baba Yaga is a folkloric memory, a faded, distorted echo of a much older, more powerful pre-Christian goddess. A deity who once held a central place in the spiritual lives of the ancient Slavs before she was demoted and demonized by the new Christian faith. When we look across the myths of ancient Europe, we find her sisters hiding in plain sight. Within the Slavic world itself, we find the goddess Morana. She was the divine personification of winter, famine, and death. Her arrival marked the end of the harvest and the beginning of the long, dark, frozen months. Her departure was so important that to this day, in many parts of Eastern Europe, a folk ritual is performed every spring where an effigy of Morana is burned or drowned to ceremonially kill winter and welcome the return of life. Baba Yaga shares many of Morana's traits. Both are associated with death and the harshness of the winter season. Both are seen as powerful female figures who must be respected and at times appeased. It is likely that many of Morana's attributes were absorbed into the figure of the witch in the woods after the old religion was suppressed. If we look further west to the folklore of Scotland and Ireland, we meet another sister, the Cailleach. She is the divine hag of winter, a giantess with a blue face who is believed to have created the mountains and valleys themselves. She carries a great hammer, and when she strikes the ground with it, the earth freezes solid, bringing the first frosts of the season. Like Baba Yaga, the Cailleach is an ancient, powerful female entity who personifies the destructive and shaping power of the winter landscape. She is another face of the same primal goddess who rules over the dark half of the year. In Germanic folklore, we find the figure of Frau Hall, and here we see the same profound ambiguity that defines Baba Yaga. Frau Hall can be a kindly benefactor, rewarding good, hard-working girls with gold, but she is also the terrifying leader of the Wild Hunt, a ghostly procession that rides through the winter sky. And she was known to punish lazy or wicked people by slitting open their stomachs and filling them with trash. This dual nature, the ability to be both a giver of rewards and a terrifying punisher, is the absolute hallmark of Baba Yaga. She is not good or evil. She is both, a figure of cosmic justice who gives to each person exactly what they deserve. When you see these figures side by side, a clear picture emerges. Baba Yaga is not an isolated creation of Slavic fairy tales. She is the Slavic face of a powerful pan-European archetype, the primordial goddess of winter, death, wisdom, and fate, a figure whose roots stretch back into the deepest parts of prehistory. After the arrival of Christianity, these powerful female deities could not be easily erased from the memory of the people, so they were demoted. They went from being divine rulers of the season to being monstrous witches living in the darkest parts of the woods. The Baba Yaga we meet in the fairy tales is not just a witch, she is a goddess in exile. When we assemble all of these ancient pieces, the goddess of winter and death, the untamed power of the wilderness, the fence made of bones, and the hut that acts as a portal, Baba Yaga's true mythological function becomes clear. She is the guardian. She stands on the very edge of reality, a fearsome sentry at the gate between the world of the living and the other world of the spirits and the dead. Her domain is a frontier between two states of being. This is why her hut has no proper address, why it must be summoned with a magic spell. It does not exist in our world in a fixed location. It exists on the border, and she is its gatekeeper. Her role is to test all those who would seek passage from one realm to the next. This reframes her entire character. Her cruelty is not random, and her questions are not simple curiosity. They are a test, a trial to determine the worthiness of the hero or heroine who stands before her. Are you brave enough not to run from her terrifying appearance? Are you wise enough to show the proper respect? Are you clever enough to solve her riddles and resourceful enough to complete the impossible tasks? She is weighing the soul of the visitor. She must determine if they have the strength of character required to survive a journey into the spirit world. She is the great and terrible adjudicator at the gates of mystery, and only those who pass her examination are granted entry. And this is why an encounter with Baba Yaga is always a moment of profound transformation. It is a rite of passage, an initiation. Those who fail the test are devoured, consumed by the underworld. Their bones used to build the fence, a warning to all others who are unworthy. But those who succeed, who prove their mettle through their courage, wit, and intuition, are not just allowed to pass. They are fundamentally changed by the experience. They emerge from her domain reborn, no longer a naive child, but a mature adult who has faced death and conquered fear. They often carry a magical gift from her, a tool or a piece of wisdom that allows them to return to the world and change their own destiny. Her hut is a crucible, a place that forges heroes or breaks them. Baba Yaga, then, is the personification of a necessary, if terrifying, natural process. She is the trial by fire that every hero must endure. She is the fearsome face of the wilderness itself, which is both dangerous and life-giving. She is not good, nor is she evil. She is a fundamental power, as neutral and as absolute as death itself. She is the ancient goddess who guards the door to the deepest mysteries, and she only grants access to those who prove themselves worthy. She does not offer easy answers or gentle comfort. She offers a challenge and the profound truth that true wisdom can only be found by willingly journeying into the very darkest parts of the forest. Having established Baba Yaga as the guardian of the threshold between worlds, we must now examine the full extent of her authority. For even when we meet the most powerful ruler of the otherworld itself, the terrifying sorcerer king, Koschei the Deathless, we discover that Baba Yaga's power may exceed even his. Koschei is the Lord of Death personified. Where Baba Yaga is a force of wild nature, he is a figure of unnatural stagnation. He is an immortal warlock whose soul is hidden away in a secret place, making him impossible to kill by ordinary means. He does not represent the natural cycle of death and rebirth. He represents a sterile, tyrannical death, a miser who hoards not just gold but life itself, by abducting beautiful princesses and locking them away in his dark castle. He is the ultimate jailer. Given that they are the two most powerful supernatural figures in the folklore, one might expect them to be allies, a king and queen of evil. But the stories reveal a far more complex and fascinating relationship. They are rarely depicted as a married couple or as siblings. Instead, they seem to operate as two independent and sometimes competing powers within the same spiritual landscape. Koschei represents death as a static prison, while Baba Yaga represents the dangerous, process-oriented power that controls the passage to that prison. Their dynamic is most clearly illustrated in the famous tale known as Maria Morevna, or The Death of Koschei, the deathless, a story that reveals Baba Yaga is not Koschei's servant, but perhaps his superior. In this tale, the hero Ivan Tsarevich must defeat Koschei to rescue his warrior princess wife, Maria Morevna. But Koschei possesses a magical horse that is faster than any other in the world, a horse that makes him impossible to catch. To have any hope of defeating the warlock, Ivan is told he must acquire a horse that is even faster, a superior steed that belongs to the only being in the world who could possess such a thing, Baba Yaga. And so Ivan must make the perilous journey to Baba Yaga's domain. But she does not simply grant him the horse. As always, he must earn it by passing her tests. She commands him to herd her magical mares for 3 days, a seemingly simple task that is in fact impossible. Each day the mares scatter and disappear. Ivan only succeeds with the help of magical animals and the witch's own daughter, who has fallen in love with him. He survives the trials, and as a reward, he is allowed to take one of the supernatural foals, a magical horse with the power to outrun even the steed of Koschei himself. This story brilliantly illuminates the true power dynamic of the Slavic otherworld. Koschei may be the tyrannical lord of death, but Baba Yaga is the independent power broker who holds the key to his undoing. She is the keeper of the means of his destruction, a fact he seems unable to do anything about. This positions her not as a simple villain, but as a complex neutral force whose power can be turned against even the lord of the underworld. Himself provided the hero is worthy enough to survive her trials. The otherworld is not a unified kingdom of evil. It is a realm of ancient competing powers. And Baba Yaga, the guardian of its gates, may be the most ancient and powerful of them all. In many of the most complex Slavic tales, Baba Yaga appears not as a single individual, but as a trio of powerful and mysterious sisters, all of whom share the same name. A hero on an impossible quest, such as in the famous story of the maiden Tsar, will be told that he must seek the aid of not one, but 3 Baba Yagis to find what he is looking for. This journey is always a serial test of the hero's endurance and character. He must travel a great distance to the home of the youngest sister, then journey even further to the home of the middle sister, and finally travel to the very edge of the world to find the third and final sister, who is always the oldest, the wisest, and the most powerful of the three. Each encounter follows a similar pattern. The hero arrives at the hut, summons its mistress, and respectfully explains his quest. The Baba Yaga will then test him, questioning him and often threatening to eat him. But if the hero shows the proper courage and respect, her demeanor changes. The first sister will admit that she does not know the answer to his quest, but she will not send him away empty-handed. Impressed by his spirit, she will give him a magical gift, a supernatural horse, a magic ball that rolls ahead to show the way. And she will provide him with the directions to the home of her middle sister, warning him that the next stage of his journey will be even more perilous. The hero repeats this process with the middle sister, who then sends him to the eldest. It is this final Baba Yaga, the oldest and most powerful, who holds the ultimate key to the hero's success. After a final test of worthiness, she provides the crucial piece of information, or the single magical tool that will allow him to finally complete his quest. This motif of a trio of powerful supernatural sisters is a clear echo of one of the most ancient and universal archetypes in all mythology, the three fates. In Greek myth, they were the Moirai. In Norse myth, the Norns, three powerful goddesses who spun, measured, and cut the thread of every human life, controlling the destiny of mortals and gods alike. By appearing as a trinity of sisters who sequentially guide and test a hero, Baba Yaga's role is elevated far beyond that of a simple witch. She is revealed to be part of a divine triumvirate that presides over fate itself. Her tests are not arbitrary. They are a necessary part of the hero's preordained destiny, a journey that she does not just oversee, but actively shapes. While many heroes earn Baba Yaga's favor through their virtue and wit, other tales reveal a much darker side to her role as a donor. In these stories, her magical aid is not given willingly. It must be taken by force. The tale of the blind man and the cripple is a perfect example. Here she appears as a purely parasitic villain who visits a kidnapped merchant's daughter to drain her of her life force. The two heroes of the story, a blind man and a cripple who have sworn brotherhood, manage to track her down and capture her. They threaten to throw her into a fiery oven unless she reveals the location of a magical fountain that can heal their afflictions. Here we see a different kind of hero, one who does not win through politeness, but through turning the witch's own terrifying power, the oven, against her. Even when captured, however, Baba Yaga is treacherous. She first tries to deceive them, leading them to a fountain of fire that will destroy them. Only when they overcome her trickery and threaten her again does she finally relent, guiding them to the true waters of healing. This reveals a crucial aspect of her character. Her power can be a source of restoration, but it is often given only grudgingly, extracted from her by those who are clever and ruthless enough to corner her. To understand Baba Yaga's exceptional status, it is useful to contrast her with the more common guardian of the Slavic woods, the Leshy. The Leshy is powerful and ancient, but fundamentally local, a tutelary deity bound to a specific forest. He is a trickster, a protector, sometimes a benefactor. He is tied to the woods he inhabits. Baba Yaga is fundamentally different. While her hut is located in the forest, she is not a forest spirit. Her power is cosmic. As we saw in the tale of Vasilisa, her servants are not woodland creatures. They are day, sun, and night. She commands not a patch of woods, but the turning of the world. The Leshy might lead you astray on a path. Baba Yaga's hut is the path to another reality. We have now explored the world of Baba Yaga. We have walked through her impossible forest, stood before her uncanny hut, and witnessed her trials through the eyes of brave Vasilisa. We have seen that she is not one thing but many, a goddess in exile, a guardian, a tester. But this raises a deeper question. Why has this story, a tale of a young girl confronting a fearsome old woman in the woods, been retold for generations? Why does it feel so true, even when we know it is fantasy? To find the answer, we must leave folklore and enter the vast forest of the human mind. The story of Vasilisa is a psychological journey, a rite of passage described by modern psychology. It is the story of how we become ourselves. This universal journey begins in safety, the symbolic cottage of childhood. This is the stage of separation, the necessary, often painful act of leaving the familiar world to begin transformation. This is Vasilisa cast out, but it is also every human being leaving the nest. Then comes liminality, the dangerous in-between state. Vasilisa arrives at its perfect symbol, Baba Yaga's hut. Freud would call this the uncanny, the horror of seeing something familiar made monstrously strange. The hut is the unholy home, a perversion of safety, a mobile predator. Crossing its bone gate threshold is not entering a monster's lair, but a space where the rules of reality break down. This is the true beginning of the trial. Inside this liminal space, the initiate confronts the archetype Jung, called the terrible mother, the devouring, possessive force that threatens to keep one dependent forever. Baba Yaga embodies this perfectly. Her tests measure whether the hero can resist being consumed and become independent. Vasilisa must serve her, but not be destroyed. Narratively, Vladimir Propp identifies Baba Yaga as the archetypal donor, the one who tests the hero and then provides the magical gift needed for the quest. Her cruelty is the catalyst. By passing the tests, using intuition and wisdom, Vasilisa proves herself. The terrible mother becomes the benefactor, giving her the fiery skull needed to destroy her oppressors. This leads to the final stage, incorporation. Vasilisa returns transformed, no longer a helpless victim, but an individual reborn. Thus, the story of Baba Yaga is not a scary tale, but a map of the soul, a story of leaving home, confronting darkness, and emerging with wisdom. There is one final lens, the radical nature of Baba Yaga's femininity. Most European folklore defines female power in relation to men: maiden, wife, mother, stepmother. Baba Yaga rejects all these categories. She is not a wife, not a conventional mother, and she is beholden to no man. Her power is ancient, elemental, self-defined. She represents a wild, sovereign femininity unbound by social expectations. She is not a simple role model. She is too dangerous, but she is a symbol of fierce independence, a reminder of a powerful femininity that will not be controlled. While other figures faded, Baba Yaga thrived. Her re-emergence into modern culture through music, art, and books. From there, she entered global pop culture, including film. In John Wick, the assassin is called Baba Yaga, though inaccurately, the Russian boogeyman is Babai, and Baba Yaga is strictly female. This mistranslation shows her name alone has come to represent pure, unstoppable force. In the Soviet Union, folklore was first suppressed, then revived for propaganda. In state-sponsored animation, Baba Yaga was often presented as a bumbling antagonist, a symbol of chaotic old ways defeated by disciplined young pioneers. In video games, she thrives again. In Tomb Raider, she haunts a lost Soviet outpost, and her hut becomes a mechanized walking refinery. Even stripped of magic and recontextualized, the archetype survives. A mysterious woman, a haunted valley, a walking house. So who is Baba Yaga? A monster? A goddess? A gatekeeper? A psychological archetype? She is all of these and none entirely. Her power comes from her refusal to be just one thing. She is a paradox, the face of death and the path to rebirth, the devourer and the giver. Her story is not a fairy tale, but an invitation, a challenge from the edge of the forest. It dares us to leave the safe path, approach the strange house that stands on the border of our understanding, and knock to see who or what answers.